Race relations continue to dominate the media cycle in the US, and joining me now is a writer making his Sky News debut, Rav Arora, and he's written about the media's narrative adding to racial divisions in America. Rav, we saw the Atlanta mass shooting be pushed by the media as a racist crime, as a white supremacist crime, as a crime driven by anti-Asian sentiment. Is there any evidence so far that that crime was indeed motivated by racial hatreds?
No, there was no evidence of any racist motivation or anti-Asian bigotry. The evidence so far shows that this man was a kind of religious fundamentalist. He had a sex addiction, and he went to these massage parlors to get these illegal sexual activities. And so he tried to basically successfully kill these women, unfortunately, to get rid of his sex addiction. That's what the evidence shows so far. But the narrative is completely different. So there is no evidence of racist motivation, but you have to understand the ideology that's at play here, which is essentially critical race theory, the idea of reducing people to a racial essence. So all that matters is a white shooter who killed 6 Asian women. And so that disparity in race must mean that racism was the driving factor, when in fact it wasn't. But this is the kind of filter that is applied to these cases, and it completely distorts the evidence of the case.
And we also had the absolutely absurd conclusions being made that this was somehow connected to COVID and the fact that Trump blamed China for the COVID crisis. He called it the Wuhan flu, and people were making links between that and this crime, which, again, absolutely zero evidence to back that sort of analysis. But we saw very different coverage in the Colorado shooting that happened after Atlanta. There were 10 victims there, including a police officer. But the killer in that instant was a Muslim immigrant, and the media seemed far less interested in his motivations. And I think we're just having a look at footage of the dead police officer who was laid to rest, his funeral there. But the media coverage there, Rav, was very different. They did not want to investigate the motivations behind this. They didn't want to talk about the race of the victims, the race of the perpetrator. Tell us about the coverage of that particular mass shooting.
Right. So when we first got information about that shooting, and this individual was, he did look white, right away you could see on Twitter, you could see prominent journalists, editors, political commentators who were decrying the white supremacy, the act of white supremacist terror that occurred in this incident. And there's a whole thread on Twitter you can find where there was just so many people with blue check marks who were labeling this a racist shooting. And then the evidence later, then the information came out that this individual was a Syrian immigrant. He was Muslim. He wasn't born in the United States. He wasn't this white supremacist figure that the original people were sort of hallucinating in this way, right? This is kind of what it's become. It's become sort of racial hallucinations, right? It's race has become the dominant factor. And so afterwards, once the information came out that this wasn't a white supremacist, clearly, then the media coverage seemed to die down afterwards. It didn't seem to be as prominent as it was in the Atlanta case where the shooter was white. So the racial composition of shootings now dictates the level of media attention that is given to these cases. And now it's, instead of the facts shaping the narrative, now the narrative and the preconditioned ideological agenda, that shapes the facts opposed to the other way around. And that's just a completely perverse, backwards place to be in right now, but that's where we're at.
Absolutely. Now, you and your family came to North America from India, and you have written about how you could have adopted this victimhood mindset and considered yourself a member of the oppressed class, but you decided against adopting that race-obsessed outlook. Tell me why.
Well, because I want to be successful in my life. I want to take ownership for my actions. I mean, it's pretty obvious why I would not identify as a victim. Um, but that's just become the popular narrative right now, is to
But
identify with victimhood. And I have so many privileges in my life. Like, I have two parents who love me. I have a house. I have I go to a decent school. I'm writing all these articles, and it would be an incredible insult to all these privileges that I have if I were to start railing against white supremacy and white privilege that I don't have. Like, that would be completely counterproductive, and just, it would be antithetical to everything that I've been taught by my parents, which is hard work equals success. It is, you work hard and you can achieve great things.
absolutely. Rav Arora, you're going places. Thank you so much for joining me. And I'm looking forward to speaking to you on Outsiders. We've got so much more to discuss. The issue of race relations, particularly in the US, is one we've got to have a deep dive into. Thanks for your time today, Rav.